Hello.
Hello, my name is Lisle Wilkerson. As John introduced me, I am also a voice actor. I do a lot of video games, like Tekken. I do Virtua Fighter, so I do Nina Williams, Christie Monteiro, Zafina. Virtua Fighter is Sarah Bryant. Crazy Taxi. I've been around for a while, so I've done a lot of arcade games. Shenmue, I did and do as well. And I also did my voice acting. A big chunk of it was done in Japan, because I grew up in Tokyo, so I do voice acting in English and Japanese as well. So I also do characters like Batsumaru from Sanrio, and characters like that I do in English and Japanese. Yeah, and I was in Lost in Translation. I do a lot of interpreting work as well for a lot of big companies, or you name it, I've probably done. Anyway, welcome to my voice acting panel. We could have done it together, I guess, John and I, but I just kind of got booked for this a few days ago, so I'm kind of a last minute guest. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Do you have any questions or?
Let's see. How do you become a voice actor?
Oh my God!
Like,
Yes, no.
Can you do the same on the computer so we can see your websites as you're explaining, like some of the characters that you do? Is there any way to get that? Can I help you be your assistant?
So I didn't, yeah, I'm not used to having a big screen behind me. I'm always used to just doing, so I should have just brought my laptop with me. I didn't. Sorry about that, but I do have photos and everything of my characters that I can show you if you come to the table. But so how did I become a voice actor? I started working, I feel like there are usually two different types of direction. Either you start becoming a voice actor from the very beginning and you kind of work your way up, or you get into theater and through that you get into voice acting. I, like a lot of other people, started out in radio. So I started working in radio at the age of 19, hosting radio shows in Tokyo for a very long time. And then it was through that I got voice work. So another person that got his start through radio is Kyle Herbert, a very good friend of mine. So, you know, there are very different directions that you can take, or paths, I should say, but that's how I got my start. I started, you know, when you're working in radio and you're hosting radio shows, people become familiar with your voice, and so a lot of times they'll reach out to you, and that's how I got my start. And I think my first ever, at least the one I remember, my first game was Crazy Taxi. This is a long time ago, the arcade game. And with that, I was asked to come to the studio, and it was, I basically had all these roles. I was told I was just going to do one character, and they're like, no, so actually, Lisle-san, we want you to do this character, this character, and this character. I'm like, what? So that happens a lot when you're in voice acting. But I do think one of the things that, obviously voice acting is acting at the end of the day. So people who want to get into the field, you know, always, you should get some kind of acting experience. There are a lot of voice acting workshops that you can go to and everything as well. But it is part of the entertainment field, so it can be very unforgiving in many ways. It's a very tough industry to kind of get into. And it's hard to stay relevant a lot of times, so that's one of the things, another pointer that I always tell people to kind of keep in mind if they are thinking about getting into it. So that's a very long and detailed explanation into how I got into voice acting. Any other questions?
let me see. I heard you say you grew up in Japan. Does that mean you were born over there?
I was born actually in the U.S. I was born in Charleston, West Virginia. That's where both my parents are from, but I moved to Japan when I was 5. And I went through international school there. There are a lot of, in fact, a lot of J-pop singers, what have you. If you guys know, do you know who Utada Hikaru is?
From the one that play Kingdom Hearts opening.
Yes, exactly. So we went to the same school. We went to ASIJ, American School in Japan. We get a lot of people in the industry that go to that school. So that's where I went to elementary and junior high school. And then I graduated from a different international school in Tokyo. But yeah, so I do a lot of voice acting in English and Japanese as well. Like, I'll do my Batsmaru voice for you. This is in English and Japanese.
Woo!
To add a little energy to the panel. Yeah. Any other questions? Or
Are you into video games?
I play video games, but I'm not very good. So my brother was the one in our family that was really good at video games. So I tended not to play very much. I do have a panel where I play Tekken against Tekken fans. And for that, I always choose Nina because I'm a terrible button masher. So I find with Nina's character, because she's so badass, that I can still beat people sometimes. And there's also I don't know what I'm going to do, so there's no way that they're going to know what I'm going to do. You can't predict the unpredictable, which a button masher is. So, thank you.
Did you love it?
Oh, very good. Yes, I will put this up on the screen.
Can you get some of our websites on the screen for us to see some of the?
Facebook or Instagram. Instagram's probably a lot of pictures of my cats. As John knows, he always comments on my cats.
Who doesn't love cats?
What cat characters do you play?
Is there a cat picture?
Ming?
Ming Ming. Let me see. Yeah, I've never been able to do this where you can have a screen that has access to other stuff. Doing the voice acting out.
What was it like growing in Japan? How did you stay relevant in the industry coming from that background?
What was it like growing up in Japan? Well, it was kind of all I knew. It's obviously a very different upbringing from growing up here. I loved growing up in Japan. I actually grew up in an area you guys might be familiar with called Harajuku. Harajuku Shibuya was my hood. So, I would walk out the door, basically be in my neighborhood and see cosplayers all the time. So it's kind of a cool neighborhood to be a part of. Always going to areas, I don't know if you guys have heard of a store called Kittyland. It's a super famous store in Harajuku. So I would go there all the time on the weekend, go shopping with my peeps. Oh, is that my IMDb page?
Why is he half naked?
Huh?
Freeze frame.
Yeah. Oh, it has Ultraman in there too, yeah. I did the voice for Ultraman Mother, which was a lot of fun. I did because I grew up with the franchise, so it was really cool to be a part of that.
Get her alive?
Back in time. Yeah, but so kind of going back to your question about growing up in Japan, it was, I don't know, it was definitely a very unique experience. Obviously, I don't fit in, so that was kind of interesting, growing up and riding on the trains, because it was like, in order to get to school, it was an hour and a half, and we'd take 3 trains from where I lived, so sometimes there'd be someone behind me, like, plucking my hair. Ooh, blonde, ooh. I was like, what? Who just did that? So, you have to deal with stuff like that. But I think the positive and the good far outweighs any bad. And yeah, I don't know, it was just for me, I didn't really realize what a special experience it was until I grew older. And then I, kind of realized. Yeah, I mean, I don't usually, yeah.
Are there any script reading samples on there that we can listen to at home, or
No, unfortunately not. A lot of times we're told that we can't keep the scripts. If we do jobs, we have to usually return the scripts, or because we're not really, especially if it's video games or even film,
Yeah, because
or
those
what
are
have you. I mean, they're not our property, so yeah. So they're a little bit picky on that, But one of the things I will say, are there any budding voice actors? People who are interested in getting into, okay, so one of the things I will say, and is really important for voice acting, and this is where the theater and also the working in radio come to play. You get thrust scripts last minute, so cold reads are extremely important. A lot of times, they'll bring you into a studio, and just because of the sensitivity of the project, or, people are very, if it's their own brand, they're very protective of it. And so you're not allowed to have the script beforehand. So sometimes you'll go in and then they'll be, okay, we want you to read for this part and this. Sometimes you'll know in advance, a lot of times you won't. So this is one thing to keep in mind. It's really important to be able to familiarize yourself with a script within a few minutes. And in radio, which is the world that I come from, we're given scripts constantly, where I was in it's called one-man radio style. So it's like college radio, where you are the producer, the director, the host, you do everything. And so when you do that, someone will bring in a commercial and they'll be like, Lisa, I need you to read this, and they'll kind of just throw it to me. And I literally have maybe a minute to read it over, but I have to give a very convincing read, and it has to sound very natural. So that's one of the things that I always think that, radio has been great background for me for that. Yeah. Let me see, what else can I talk about? And I also so I do a lot of interpreting as well for a lot of clients. One of the things I did, which is up here, is for the Keanu Reeves film, Man of Tai Chi. He worked with probably one of the most famous Japanese art directors, Yohei Taneda. And I did, and for that, it was a film set. So I would have to kind of shadow Yohei-san and do, oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, so that was a really cool experience. We they filmed in China, mainland China, for about a month and a half or 2 months. And then I followed and was with them for about a month, or 3 weeks to a month in Hong Kong. So I was there for the Hong Kong filming, but really cool experience to be a part of. Yeah. I haven't seen my own. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Since you've been raised in Tokyo and been speaking fluent Japanese, have you been trying to do voice acting in Japanese, like Japanese seiyuu?
I do some. Yeah, like I just did actually a little sample of the Batsumaru. So when I did the Batsumaru project, it was, Hello Kitty's angry penguin best friend. And for that, they were looking for voice actors that were comfortable in both English and Japanese. And there are not very many of them that are. And even for me, even though I'm fluent in Japanese voice acting is still really hard for me. It's always a really big challenge, you know? So I get people coming up to me at conventions all the time. They're like, oh, I speak some Japanese, so I want to be a seiyuu. I'm like, yeah, come on, good luck with that. Because it's not just about speaking Japanese, like the seiyuu, and I feel like with anime and with video games, it's a little bit better, but when you're doing commercials and stuff like that, they tend to be a little bit flatter, and the enunciation and everything, it's very, very komakai. It's like very, it's extremely complicated, and then you have a mic in front of you, right? And it's not your native language, so for whatever reason, you just get really a lot more nervous, right? And so. But I do a lot, like I've done a lot of commercial stuff. Like I did a big commercial for Nissan, and that was in Japanese for TV. It was for, I think, like 3 years. It was a Nissan Oti was the name of the car, and so I did that. And then Batsumaro. And then I've done some anime-related stuff as well, but it was more for educational stuff in Japan. So I do some seiyuu stuff. Yeah. And I would love to do more of that, because I do enjoy, I think one of the things about the Japanese voice acting or seiyuu and then the English voice acting is the approach is kind of very different, and the mindset and everything is just very different. Because I think that one thing that you need to keep in mind, oh yay! Oh, and that, by the way, I was in a real MMA fight. This is what happens when you live in Japan and you are up for doing craziness. This was, did I answer your question? Okay, good. Because I want to talk a little bit about this. So this was I was in the movie Lost in Translation, where I worked with Bill Murray, and that movie I actually got through a big agency in Japan called IMO, Inagamoto Jimusho. And they approached me, because I used to do a lot of boxing back in the day, but incorporating it into my normal exercise workout. I never hit anyone in my life, but they came up to me one day, or they called me, this is in 2007 actually, they called me and they said, Lisle-san, how would you like to be in a fight? And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. I've never, what? What do you mean? And so, anyway, because I'm crazy, I said, what do you mean a fight? And they said, well, it's going to be a fixed fight, a rigged fight. John would probably love this story, because he's really big into wrestling. But, so, I said yes, I would do it. I said, here's my condition. Give me a few days. I said, here's my condition. I will do it if you set me up with my opponent, and who is a real fighter. She was a kickboxer, and I was coming in as a boxer. And so, yeah, it was, to this day, I've done some crazy things, but it has got to be the craziest experience I've ever done in my life. I get to the venue, and I found out at the venue that it was the championship match that I was a part of. I didn't know, and I told my manager, I was like, are you kidding me, Ricky? How come you didn't tell me I'm in a championship match? It was crazy. And then they even had like this fake bio written up about me. I knew nothing about this. So I found out so we got to the venue, and then because they assigned me a manager, because I'm a fighter, so I have to have a manager, and his name was Ricky, and he was actually just with the agency, right? So he came over, and he's like, oh, Lisle, every fighter, or opponent, you all get to have 5 minutes in the ring to practice. And I look at him like, Ricky, I have no freaking idea what I'm doing. How am I supposed to practice? So now here's the thing. I did meet up with the opponent, before, and with her manager, and we had 3 times to practice. She came up with choreography for us, and so by the time it came to the day of the game, I was so bruised. And so anyway, so he's like, yeah, you want to go and, do shadow boxing, whatever. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Of course I'm not going to do that. People will be like, what? What is she doing there? She's wearing Lululemon, normally for yoga wear, obviously. But anyway, so he's like, okay, well then go and do your, you have to get your head checked, right, to make sure that you're sane. I was like, I probably should not get my head checked because I'm probably not sane. But so, you have to get like a medical checkup. So I was in line, and the guy next to me, a Japanese guy, he was talking to a friend of his who was also going to be fighting, right? And then he turned to me, because he has no idea I speak Japanese. So he turned to me in broken English and said, you Miss Wilkerson? And then he said, how many fights you do, right? I had no idea that my agency had created this bio for me. I didn't know. So I told him, I was like, oh, it's my first fight, right? I said in English. And then I heard him say in Japanese to his friend, why is she lying? She's done 7 or 8 fights. And I'm sitting there listening to him like, what is going on right now? It was the most insane. I'm sitting there listening going, oh my gosh, I have no idea. What am I doing? And then, so meanwhile, then I go and get my checkup and everything. And the doctor was like, are you nervous? You don't seem nervous. I'm like, no, I'm shocked. I'm just completely shocked by everything. Anyway, so it was a really incredible experience, definitely. And we had the fight at an area called Shinjuku Liquid Room, which is in downtown Shinjuku. It's right near Kabukicho area. There were probably like about 500, 700 people there. And it was insane. So that's from that picture. Any other questions?
Do you like the noise what's happening right now?
Taiko? Competing with Taiko? All right. Oh yeah, there's Batsmaru. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I'm a huge Hello Kitty fan because I grew up with the original Hello Kitty when she first came out. I think like in the 70s, and so I was part of that whole generation that grew up with Hello Kitty. So when I found out that there was, that I had this audition for Sanrio, I was super excited. I was like, oh, I want to audition for Hello Kitty. And then I found out the kind of voice that they were looking for Hello Kitty. I was like, yeah, nope, not interested in doing that. It's like, if you've heard Monica Rial, who, you guys, if you follow anime and, you probably know her, she has done the voice for Hello Kitty, as has Sandy Fox, another really talented good friend of mine who does voice acting. So, Hello Kitty is a very high-pitched voice. So I was happy, actually, that I did not do that voice. But he was a lot of fun. I enjoyed doing Batsmaru, being a part of that project. Yeah. Nina. And I would have to say, out of all the characters, one of the questions that I get a lot from people when I go to conventions is, who's your favorite character, right? And, a lot of times voice actors will say, well, I don't have one favorite, which I completely understand, and I feel the same. But at the same time, I do love Nina Williams a lot. I find her to be a really kind of complex fighting character. She's very strong, and I really like the backstory of her. Like, she has a lot of weakness when it comes to family and loyalty within family. And so that's one of the reasons I like her. Another reason I like her is because if you button mash like I do, you can win, as I mentioned earlier. Yeah. And then Joy, are there any, do you guys know Shenmue? Have you heard of Shenmue?
Yes.
Yes, Emily, yes. Me too. Yes, thank you, Brian. So Shenmue is a game that you've probably heard news about it. About 4 or 5 years ago at E3, a Kickstarter was announced for Shenmue 3. So Shenmue is originally from the Sega family, and a very famous game creator, Yu Suzuki, who also does Virtua Fighter and stuff like that, he made Shenmue 1 and Shenmue 2. Shenmue 2 came out almost 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. And so then Shenmue fans all over the world, because it has like a very big cult following, and they've been waiting for Shenmue 3 to come out. But then of course, as you know, entertainment industry, voice acting industry, it's all about business. And there were a lot of mergers, a lot of people leaving, there was a lot of stuff going on within the Sega family. And so they never released Shenmue or Shenmue 3. So finally, 5 years ago at E3, Yu Suzuki came on the stage as one of the opening ceremony guests, and he came on with one of the people from Sony, and they announced that Shenmue 3 was going to be coming out. And so that's coming out this August. So there are a lot of very, very, very excited Shenmue people, Shenmue fans, and so that's one of the characters that I voice for Shenmue. Her name is Joy. She's quite the little sassy badass. I love her. Yeah, and then that's one of my headshots. Thank you, Bryant. One of the things that I think I do love about the work that I've done is I've done a lot of fighting, kind of badass characters, and yeah, it's been a really good ride. I really enjoy working on video games. Any other questions?
Can you do some voice line from Joy and Nina Williams?
Joy would be, watch where you're going, hey! She was kind of like that. She was like really sassy, and she was always yelling at Hazuki, the main character. So she rode a motorcycle. She was always like riding around and yelling at him. That was one of the things she did. Now so it was very kind of high energy, a little bit higher voice. For Nina, she's a lot more even-keeled, and one of the most famous lines, and a lot of times when I take pictures with people, I'll do, time to die. Like she says that a lot. And I say that a lot to people. But I make sure that they understand the context. Yeah. But yeah, so she'll say, time to die. Another one that Nina Williams does have some really good lines, like, isn't it past your bedtime? Ha! Like she'll say stuff like that. Or, I don't play with amateurs. Yeah. You know. Yeah, she's a super badass. Yes. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
If you could be the voice of any character in media, whatever media you choose, who would you voice?
If I could be a character, it doesn't necessarily need to be video games.
It could be any media, TV, movie.
You know what though? I would really love to do like a Wonder Woman kind of voice. I loved Wonder Woman. And I like her character a lot. So I think that would be a lot of fun. I'd love to do someone like that. Yeah. I mean, Marvel obviously is one of the creme de la creme of voice acting and what have you. But yeah, I think I would like to do a Wonder Woman or a Batgirl or someone really fun, very independent. Even though I do love Captain Marvel, she's also a pretty cool chick. But 1 minute? Oh, okay. We have 1 more minute. Final question.
Next panel, nobody's probably showed up for mine. Take as long as you want.
Yes, sir.
Any other voice demonstrations you can give us for the different characters that you played? And he's got to keep up with you.
Yeah. That's actually my website, but I don't use it.
Remember, we have one person who wants to see it.
Who wants to see?
Oh, the next pin.
Oh.
I've never seen this before.
Aw.
Yeah.
What is your next
Too
panel?
kawaii for
It's coming out. We're screening this. It's called Too Kawaii for Comfort.
Oh,
It's
fun.
way to describe it.
I
It's
saw
like
that
if
earlier. Yeah.
Requiem for a Dream took place at a really shitty anime convention. So if you can handle insanely dark comedy, you should check it out.
We all love dark comedy. In fact, we're living in a dark comedy right now. I do that. But the world is crazy. Yes.
Everybody gets offended about everything. It's always
But I will say that anime and voice acting for video games and everything's a lot of fun, but my best ever, as in paycheck wise, my best ever job was just one word, and I was the voice for Panasonic for 4 years, and that was the easiest job I've ever done. So this is one thing I will say. A lot of times people will say, oh, I want to be only in video games and anime. And those of us who understand the industry were like, no, you also want to do commercials. Believe me. Because, yes,
What was the word for Panasonic?
Panasonic.
Just literally
Yeah,
saying
yeah, literally. I went in for the audition. They did 20 takes, 20, 25 takes. I have these voices. They're different voices that I always will use. They're kind of my go-to voices, and then I'll arrange them a little bit depending on what the director is looking for. But I have what I call my motherly voice, and that was the one that I used for Panasonic. And it's basically, it was just like Panasonic. It was kind of whispery, but I can't, but yeah, it's kind of a whispery voice. But to this day, I mean, I worked with so many seiyuu and a lot of pop idols, whatever, from Japan, and that's I'll say that because I did it for 4 years, and so they'll be like, oh my gosh, I know that. It was also back in the day. So it was when in Japan, it was when MDs, like mini disc players, which I know were never big here, but in Japan they were huge, and so it was during that heyday. Yeah. So to this day, it's probably the most I've been paid for in a job, and they literally took my audition and they used it for the best job ever. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for coming, guys, and I will be over at my table. And our next panel coming up, I didn't ask your name.
Oh, that's fine. Just say it's the 2 Kawaii for Comfort Screening Extravaganza Big Time Show.
Woo!